Today we're talking goalies. What exactly is wrong with Cal Petersen? How can he fix it? And what does the future of the goaltending position look like for the Los Angeles Kings? We're talking about all that and more on today's episode of Locked on Los Angeles Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
My name is Sarah Avampato, host of your show, and as always, glad that you have chosen to spend some time with me here on your favorite podcast, hopefully, Locked On Los Angeles Kings, coming to you every day, sort of the week, talking about the Kings. I've been talking about the Kings in both, vocal and written form since like 2016, so I've been around the block with this team through all of the down, and now we're excited to be looking at the up, because the Kings are looking up in the standings, holding down a playoff position, and just sort of waiting to see what happens as all these other teams get back to playing while we're still on a break. I will, of course, be keeping an eye on what's going on with that playoff picture as the week progresses, as we wait for the Kings to get back into action. But on today's show, we're talking more goaltending. Last week, I talked with Jay Forster from Locked On Columbus Blue Jackets, who we talked about, not the Blue Jackets, we talked about goaltending because Jay is also a goalie in real life, and I wanted to get a goalie's perspective on what we're seeing from Jonathan Quick this season, and what is helping lead to his success overall this year. So if you missed that, that was last week's episode, so go and give that a listen. On today's show, we are talking with Jay about Cal Petersen, because that's the other half of the goalie equation, is what's up with Cal Petersen? Why has he been struggling? What's he need to do to turn it around? And what does the future of goaltending look like for the Kings? What should Rob Blake be doing? Should he be thinking about extending Jonathan Quick, trading Jonathan Quick, acquiring another goalie? Is Matt Villalta ready? Like, what does the pipeline look like for the Kings, and how should they manage the goaltending position going forward? So Jay and I sat down and talked about that in part 2 of our conversation. So we're going to jump in right now to hearing all about goaltending and Cal Petersen with Jay from Locked On Blue Jackets right now on Locked On Los Angeles Kings. So I feel like the flip side of this coin is Cal Petersen, who has been kind of expected to take over as starter, and it's essentially like the Kings are handing him this role, and it's a good thing that Jonathan Quick has apparently refigured himself out, because Petersen sort of struggled to start the season. He's looked better now. I feel like, some of those games we've seen recently, the goals against have not necessarily all been his fault. It's been more like, oh, the defense forgot to defense. But like, what are you seeing from Cal Petersen? Like, do you think he's back on the right trajectory to getting back to kind of being the dominant goalie we think he can be? Or like, do we need to start being afraid?
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like goalies are always like one bad game away from being, traded by the fan base, and yeah, I think Petersen has definitely needed to be better this season. And it's kind of we're seeing the opposite of what we've seen from Jonathan Quick. It's almost like a lack of confidence. It's the old cliche of when hockey players hold the stick too tight, and it impacts their scoring ability or their passing ability or whatever. Like Cal Petersen, I feel like is almost overreacting on saves. He feels way less controlled than a lot of what the elite goalies have been like. This is a problem that I've actually seen a lot with Elvis Merzlikins this season. There's been a lot of overreactions, which is not something that's normally in Merzlikins' game, and I don't think it's something that's normally in Petersen's game. And I wonder if it kind of goes back to a confidence issue of, he's kind of been told he's the heir apparent to Jonathan Quick, in the same way that, how do you follow Carey Price in Montreal if you're a goaltender? How do you fill those shoes? We're kind of seeing it in New York, where Shesterkin is playing out of his goddamn mind because look at the shoes he has to fill. You know,
Right.
Henry Lundqvist, maybe one of the best goalies to ever play the game. And I wonder if a lot of it is a confidence issue of, hey, you have to follow in Jonathan Quick's shoes, and he's kind of gone, oh no, that's too much pressure.
Yeah.
Which I can relate to as a person that also doesn't respond well to pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem like he's kind of settled down a little bit as the season's gone on. I say this all the time: goalies are creatures of habit.
Mm-hmm.
They have their routines, they have their daily lives. They don't like it when that gets interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's kind of had some time to sell into playing more games as well. Because I mean, this was the game wears on goalies like it doesn't wear on any other player. You know, there's a lot of, oh, well, why are the goalies so tired? They just stand there for 60 minutes. And I'm like, okay, cool. You go and like pop a squat and just do
Right.
that for 60 minutes and then come back and tell me that a goalie's job is easy,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if it's partially fatigue. He's not used to playing this many games, partially confidence, and just a bizarre seeming drive to do the opposite of what Jonathan Quick is
Mm-hmm.
doing, which makes me think that maybe Jonathan Quick is not the product of a goaltending coach and is something that he's kind of figured out himself
Mm-hmm.
to kind of tie it back to the fact that Jonathan Quick seems to be, 22 again.
Which feels like very Jonathan Quick of like, yeah, well, guess what? I'm just going to do it my way. And then everyone else is like, oh no, oh, something has happened. There is more coming up right after this, but first, let's talk about snacks because Built Bars are here for you if you're looking for something tasty for your day. If you enjoy eating snacks and if you enjoy eating healthy snacks, well, Built Bars are a great choice for you. And not only do we have Built Bars, which are great tasting protein bars, but they've also got fun Built Puffs. If you haven't tried a puff, well, you are missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they are not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are, of course, a fan favorite with some incredible flavors, including the yummy churro. We've got coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, and many more. These are going to be your new favorite Built Bars. All of our Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, including the Built Puffs. They are low in calories, high in protein, and a great replacement for, your standard candy bar. A typical candy bar can be from anywhere to 200 to 300 calories, but Built Bars are on kind of an average 130 calories. They are low in sugar, low carbs, high protein, and all around delicious. They've got tons of great flavors, including new this month white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and they have got new flavors coming out all of the time. So if you think a flavor might be good, well, I bet there's going to be a Built Bar for it. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. You are, of course, listening to Locked On Los Angeles Kings. Thank you for making this show your first listen of the day every day. Now go and make sure to check out our Olympic Hockey Daily Show presented by Locked On NHL. It's a bonus podcast covering all of the action going on in Beijing. You can find it at the Locked On NHL podcast feed, so go make that your second listen of the day. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So go check it out. And now let's check out some goalies.
Listen, I respect a goalie who is powered entirely by spite.
Oh yeah. That's him. Like I can easily
my guy.
see all of this just being mental of Jonathan Quick being like, "Oh, you're ready to hand my job to the other guy? Like, well, I've got some news for you." And then Petersen being like, "Ah, snap." Like
Yeah, that is the other option, is that they were like, "John, we're gonna give you less games this season." He was like, "Oh, bet." And then
yeah, here we are.
This is what happened.
Yeah.
For the foreseeable future, it does feel like the Kings are starting to run with a little bit more of a tandem now. I feel like I've seen more of Cal Petersen and a little bit less of Jonathan Quick in the few Kings games that I've managed to catch over the last couple of weeks, which is great because especially since the Kings seem to be kind of on the road to the playoffs. Touch wood. The two healthy potential starting goalies is the ideal.
Yeah.
It's something that we saw in the bubble with Columbus, where Jonas Corposalo started to struggle. So they took him out and they put Elvis in.
Yeah.
And then Elvis started to struggle and they put Corposalo back in. And it's something that also kind of reminds me of not to talk about the Blackhawks at a time like this, but the Blackhawks playoff run in 2015. Something that's always kind of stuck with me is that first series against Nashville, where Corey Crawford allowed 3 goals in the first period of game 1. They put Scott Darling in, and he was phenomenal right up until I think it was like the first period of game 6 when he allowed 3 goals in the first period. They swapped again, put Corey Crawford in, and then obviously, Corey Crawford took them all the way to the Stanley Cup. So having 2 good goalies that are capable of starting and are capable of playing at a high level, like I think Jonathan Quick and Cal Petersen are, like this is the best kind of problem to have.
Right.
It's like complaining about who's your 4th line left wing. Like, oh no, we have 2 really good goalies. That I mean, Petersen signed for pretty cheap. Obviously, Quick's deal is pretty big, but that feels like a problem for the future Kings and not the Kings this season that would really like to make the playoffs, please.
Yeah. And I feel like that, the big question for future Kings is I think Quick has 1 more year on his deal. And then it's like, well, what do you do? Like, especially if next season he comes back and is still playing at this level, do you keep him? Do you move on from him? What do they feel about Matt Villalta? Is he ready to do, he's never even got, I think he sat on the bench in the NHL. He hasn't gotten any action yet. I feel like that's a I'm definitely glad that I'm not Rob Blake, because that's a decision that's gonna stink, because we, like you said, we know how important it is to have, more than 2 capable goalies in your system. If you don't have a number 3 and a number 4, sometimes, we're seeing it with Buffalo at one point had literally 0 goalies left. Carolina just had to sign their kid who played in the NCAA early and lure him away from college because they ran out of goalies. You need goalies you can trust. And so I feel like that's, have fun with that one, Rob Blake.
You have goalie depth right up until you don't have goalie depth. And it's something that we've seen with Montreal. Obviously, with no Carey Price, they've, Jake Allen has been good. Jake Allen, I believe, got injured. And now they're kind of rotating between Sam Montembeault, Caden Primo, and then their 5th string goaltender. The Kings, if you decide, okay, we're gonna trade Petersen for, I don't know, maybe a slightly younger goalie prospect, or if you think that Matt Villalta is ready to come up, and then you are 1 Jonathan Quick injury away from the bottom of the standings, which again is something we've kind of seen in Columbus, where I think the goaltending is not the reason that we are at the bottom of the standings, or nearish the bottom of the standings. But if you look at this time last season, we had a really strong goalie pipeline. We had Merzlikins and Korpisalo in the NHL. We had Veini Vevalainen and Matiss Kivlenieks in the AHL, both who looked like they were going to be really good NHL goalies, or at least capable NHL backups. Traded Vevalainen for a guy who promptly went back to Europe at the start of this season because he didn't want to report to the AHL. And obviously, Matiss Kivlenieks passed away this summer. So we've gone from having 4 potential NHL caliber goalies, whether that be starters or backups, to, well, we have Elvis and Korpisalo, and then
good luck.
I guess JF Berube is our 3rd choice. Daniil Tarasov is looking, again, he's kind of he might be the heir apparent in Columbus in a few years, but he got injured. So, like I said, you are 1 goalie injury away from no goalies, realistically speaking.
I feel like the Kings know that well. A couple years ago, it cascaded all the way down to the AHL, and then in the playoffs they had to play a guy who'd never played. He played 1 AHL game and then suddenly was thrust into the playoffs because it was Jeff Zakoff got hurt in warm-ups, and I think Jack Campbell was hurt. It was just suddenly you're oh, we actually don't have goalies. There are none. Here you go.
I was actually in California when all that was going down, and I was like, man, I should have brought my gear. Maybe I could have sat
Right?
on the bench for
Stepped
the
in,
rain, you
yeah.
know? Clearly, because I think it was Dusty Imu and his
Mm-hmm.
son were the
Mm-hmm.
AHL goalies for a hot minute,
Yeah.
and that sure was a time.
Yeah, that was, yeah, I think that's like example one of here's why you need goalie depth. Like, I'm sure you don't want to spend money on this, but guess what? You need to. Like, please
Right.
get a
So,
goalie.
I personally would not move on from Peterson.
We wrap up with some more goalie talk after this, but first, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Right now, as football continues its march through the playoffs, right on down to the big game coming up right around the corner. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And of course, it isn't just football. BetOnline has up to the minute information on pro and college hoops, the NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real time updates of current games. So don't wait to take advantage of the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. Go check it out at BetOnline, where the game starts.
I also wouldn't be so quick to be like, well, Peterson's the next big thing
Right.
in LA. We're just gonna let Quick walk away, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe he wants to retire. He'll be what, 37 when his deal runs
Mm-hmm.
out. He might want to be done.
Yeah.
37 is old for a
Yeah.
goalie, you know. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is 37, and I think he's
Mm-hmm.
really kind of finally starting to show the effects
Mm-hmm.
of his age. I think it doesn't help that Chicago has been terrible this
Right.
season, but
Yeah.
he's not the Marc-Andre Fleury he was even a couple of seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it could suddenly be that Quick decides, actually, I am done twisting my body up like a pretzel. I am going to retire to the beach and live in my feral cave with my feral children. Um,
I assume that's how all
so
goalies live.
it's really tough to say in the next couple of years what the Kings are going to do with their
Yeah.
goaltending,
Yeah.
because it all kind of hinges on Jonathan Quick. But if I'm Rob Blake, I try and talk Quick into one more year at
Mm-hmm.
maybe 3 to 4 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially because the Kings, at least right now, are good-ish and should be better in the next couple years. So, like, if you want to keep Quick, like that's your pitch to him is listen, let's go on one last run. And, you know, I feel like
Right,
he
let's get the band back together.
right.
Kopitar's obviously Kopitar is still very good,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but he's getting up there.
Mm-hmm.
Dustin Brown is getting up there. Drew Doughty probably only has a couple more years left of being like a number one
Mm-hmm.
or top pairing defenseman. You've seen how quickly Duncan Keith dropped off a
Yeah.
cliff.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of the future for Drew
Mm-hmm.
Doughty. So if you
Mm-hmm.
have a chance to like keep the band back
Yeah.
together one more time, like if that's what I would do if I was Rob Blake. And then by that point, Peterson's had a couple of years as a 1A or 1B. Villalta's had a couple of years to finish baking in the oven of the AHL. Lucas Perique as
Mm-hmm.
well is coming up. I don't think much of Garrett Sparks
Yeah.
in terms of his future in the Kings
Mm-hmm.
organization, but we don't have to talk about Garrett Sparks because he is not super important
Nope.
in my life or also the NHL. But you have two potential quite good goalies in
Mm-hmm.
Perique and Villalta. It's an interesting time to look at the goaltending in LA, especially when
Yeah.
you look at the all of the up and coming talent. I think you owe it to
Mm-hmm.
guys like Kopitar to
Mm-hmm.
put one more push in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where they're at finally is like here's our push. Like your contracts are all winding down. Let's see what we can do before we really hand the reins over to the next generation of, Petersen and Brant Clark coming up and Brock Faber and all those guys, like the next sort of core. Like, here we go. Let's do something. Please no one get hurt in the process.
Right, like, and that's kind of what we're seeing in Pittsburgh at the minute is
Mm-hmm.
that core is going for one last push and is
Yeah.
doing a pretty damn good job of it,
Yeah.
as much as it pains me to admit it. But Malkin's not getting any younger, Crosby's
Mm-hmm.
not getting any younger, Letang's not getting any younger. They are getting otherworldly goaltending from Tristan Jarry for some
Mm-hmm.
godforsaken reason. I
Who
think if you're
knows?
the Kings, you look at what
Yeah.
Pittsburgh is doing
Mm-hmm.
with their kind of aging out core,
Yeah.
and I don't see any reason why Los Angeles could
Yeah.
not do the same thing.
Yeah.
Especially if Jonathan Quick continues to play like
Mhm.
he is.
Yeah. So crazy. So weird. Who would have thought we'd be sitting here talking about like Jonathan Quick as a good problem instead of like how do we make him quietly go away? But it's a good problem for the Kings to have. Thank you so much to Jay for talking goalies with me. We've got a little bit more fun content with Jay coming up about why goalies do some of the things that they do. That'll finish up our conversation later this week. If you want to hear more from Jay, you can always go find Locked On Blue Jackets, available, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. They're on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. And if you don't know Jay yet, Jay also covers the rain for Field Pass Hockey. You can go find his rain coverage at FPH Rain. We'll also be having Jay back again on the show in the future to talk about the rain, so keep an eye or an ear out for that as well. That is it for me today on this show. Like I said, we've got more with Jay coming up. If you missed the first part of our conversation about Jonathan Quick, go back and check that out. And then I'm also really excited to bring you a conversation that I had with Mike Farwell, who covers the Kitchener Rangers and gets to see a lot of our prospect, Francesco Pinelli. He's the captain of the Rangers, having a great season already. So Mike and I sat down to talk about what he can bring to the Kings organization and how the season is going for him. So keep an ear out for that as well this week here on Locked on Los Angeles Kings. If there's any other, prospects or other players who you want to hear about, want to hear how their seasons are going, let me know and I will try to track down someone to come on and give us the inside scoop on some of your favorite prospects. So that is it for today. Make sure you're following this show on Twitter at Locked on LA Kings. I'm on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. Make sure you're also subscribed to the show on your favorite podcast app of choice or on YouTube. Subscribe and hit that notification button so you never miss a future episode. And make sure you come back tomorrow and all the time here on Locked on Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.